All right, so move on to the next segment. We're going to pivot over here to the world of MMA, and I'll be sharing my fight prediction for this weekend's fight taking place in the UFC between Diego Lopes and Jean Silva. So this fight taking place at the featherweight division between Diego Lopes and Jean Silva will be the main event of UFC Noche card taking place this weekend in the UFC. So I'll be sharing my following storylines heading into this fight in the UFC at the featherweight division. First storyline is, can Diego Lopes bounce back after that featherweight championship loss that he suffered against Alexander Volkanovski back in spring? Now, I actually went back and looked at this fight today. I rewatched it for the first time since seeing it back a few months ago. I thought it was a really good performance by Diego Lopes, but I could see the argument by some that it wasn't really close. And Alexander Volkanovski really pulled away against Diego Lopes in those championship rounds. But the disadvantages, I personally thought that Diego Lopes had a really good performance against Alexander Volkanovski. The disadvantages that Diego Lopes had was the inexperience at that type of level in championship fights. Fighting an all-time great Alexander Volkanovski, one of, if not the greatest featherweight champion of all time, and he failed to make the defensive adjustments against Alexander Volkanovski in that fight in the last time that we seen him in the octagon. And that was really those two things were the deciding factor of him losing that championship fight against an all-time great Alexander Volkanovski. So I want to see how Diego Lopes can bounce back after getting a taste of championship fight coming up short, and now has a big opportunity in front of him being the main event at UFC Noche, fighting against a really dangerous opponent in Jean Silva at the featherweight division. Next storyline is Jean Silva ready for the big moment? This is his biggest UFC fight. This is his biggest MMA fight, because there could be some serious ramifications for the winner of this fight possibly being next in line down the line in 2026 for a featherweight championship opportunity. And the way how Jean Silva is going, a victory against Diego Lopes is going to put him in the top 5 of this featherweight division, I truly believe. Because he's already riding a 13-fight winning streak in his MMA career right now, and he's been undefeated since joining the UFC. So this guy is the real deal. Now we're going to see if he can put it all together in the biggest fight of his MMA career, fighting against Diego Lopes. So let's get to the tail of the tape here. Starting off with Jean Silva. Jean Silva has an MMA record of 16 victories, 2 losses to his resume. He has 12 victories come away of knockout, 3 submission victories in his MMA career. Currently the 10th ranked contender at the featherweight division, stands at 5'7" with a reach of 69 inches. Then I'm looking at Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes has 26 victories, 7 losses to his MMA career, has 10 victories coming away of knockout, 12 submission victories. Currently the 2nd ranked contender in the featherweight division, stands at 5'11" with a reach of 72 inches. So the height and the reach goes in favor of Diego Lopes heading into this fight in the main event at UFC Noche this weekend. So these are the following game plans I have for these respective fighters to follow if they want to walk out of San Antonio, Texas with a victory in the main event at UFC Noche. Starting off with Jean Silva. I think Jean Silva's got to put the pressure on Diego Lopes early on in this fight. If he could do that from the start of round 1 to whenever this fight concludes, he has a good chance of winning this fight. He is a good pressure fighter in that octagon. Jean Silva is good at keeping the fight coming forward with him walking down his opponents, making his opponents retreat and fight off their back foot, force them to make mistakes. And that's where Jean Silva eats his opponents alive, when he could do that. Put the pressure on them, making them retreat, fight off the back foot, and that leads to his opponents making mistakes. And when Jean Silva can control the pace of a fight, that is where you see the magic happen out of this fighter. That's one of the reasons why he's never lost in his UFC career. That's why he's on a 13 fight winning streak in his MMA career right now. Because of that right there. Being a good pressure fighter, controlling the pace of the fight, not letting up on his opponents, and always being the dominant fighter in that octagon. So I think he should do that. Next, I think Jean Silva should land the significant strikes. That's his bread and butter. And he has explosive, dynamite hands. And so does Diego Lopes. But Jean Silva's, these thunderous right hands, he's a good at landing head strikes. Whether it's with the kicks, the righty, lefty, right hand, left hand, he is a good striker and can mix in good striking with some hooks and some uppercuts, landing punches and flurries. This is the reason why he has 12 victories coming away of knockout in his MMA career. So I think he should follow that game plan against Diego Lopes. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think he should do that in this fight against Diego Lopes. And last but not least, I think he should fight in different movements. Jean Silva, when he can fight in different movements, not staying still, fighting in different movements, he could catch Diego Lopes off guard, fighting in different movements. And I think Jean Silva, when he does this, needs to be alert defensively, because Diego Lopes is a good striker as well, but he can be alert defensively, fighting in different movements. And when he does this, he keeps his hands low and plays around with feints. And I think if Jean Silva could put all this together, he has a real good chance of defeating Diego Lopes and having his hand raised and moving up the rankings in the featherweight division. So those are game plans I have for Jean Silva. Now, as for Diego Lopes, just like I just said for Jean Silva, I think Diego Lopes has to put the pressure on and start off fast. One of the flaws that I see it against Alexander Volkanovski, he played the pace of what Alexander Volkanovski wanted to. No, if you gas out, he has to be all in. If you gas out, so be it. But Diego Lopes' rhythm, his pace, his bread and butter is starting off fast, fighting fast at a fast, high tempo pace. And you can even throw it back to his fight that he had around this time last year against Brian Ortega, when he started off fast but started to slow down. That's where you've seen Diego Lopes make some mistakes. No, he is that fast tempo fighter and finds a lot of success when he does that. So if he can walk down Jean Silva, close the distance, get in rhythm offensively with the quick, fast-paced offense, like I'm referring to football, but I'm talking about MMA. But landing the significant strikes, landing the leg kicks, not overthink his shots. That's the best version that you see out of Diego Lopes. So I think we should see that in this fight. Next, I think Diego Lopes needs to be on time. And what I mean by be on time is he cannot afford to lose a counter-striking battle, because that's when he'll make mistakes defensively, and that's where you see Diego Lopes get frustrated. He cannot afford to get frustrated against a dangerous fighter like Jean Silva that can end the fight in a blink of an eye. Most of his victories are by knockout. You play around with your food, that's not going to be a good outcome. Be alert defensively, and I think he should fight in a high guard stance defensively. And last but not least, I think Diego Lopes should land the takedowns. If Diego Lopes can land the takedowns, tap into that jiu-jitsu background, that's one of the best versions that we see out of Diego Lopes offensively. This is his best bet to win the fight, mixing it up. You got to do more than just the striking. You got to land the takedowns. You got to land the takedowns, mix it up on the ground. He has 12 victories come away of submission, like I just said a few moments ago. Gain ground control, ground and pound, and shoot for submissions. If Diego Lopes could do that, he has a good chance of defeating Jean Silva and getting back on track in the main event of UFC Noche. But with that being said, I'm going to go with Diego Lopes to defeat Jean Silva by decision in the main event of UFC Noche. I really believe that this will be a war. Styles makes fights in that octagon, and this is going to be an absolute banger between Diego Lopes and Jean Silva. But I'm going to go with Diego Lopes to weather the storm. He is going to have to weather the storm in order to get a decision victory, go 5 rounds with Jean Silva. He's going to have to take punishment. He's going to have to go into the deep waters and find a way to survive. I think he's going to struggle to adapt to Jean Silva offensive style in the first 5 minutes of the fight. But once he figures that out, I think he will be able to take control of this fight, being aggressive and having that fast-paced offense, like I'm referring to football. But again, that's the best version that you see out of Diego Lopes when he is a fast-paced fighter. When he fights at his fast-paced tempo in that octagon. And he's good at mixing up the strikes. I think he needs to do that against Jean Silva. Landing the double jabs, landing the 1-2 combinations, winning the counter-striking, being on time in the counter-striking department, battle, and mix in some calf kicks. But it can't just be all striking for Diego Lopes. He has a great jiu-jitsu background. He has 12 victories come away of submission. He's going to have to take it to the ground. Land some takedowns, try to gain some ground control, ground to pound. On the mount control, try to gain some time control on the mount as well. Try to find ways and shoot for some submissions, and try to find ways to frustrate Jean Silva in that octagon. But if Diego Lopes can do all that, I think he's going to be victorious, and I think he's going to win this fight by decision in the main event of UFC Noche. But that is my fight prediction for this weekend's fight. taking place in the UFC between Diego Lopes and Jean Silva.